Get out of my office now or you will regret this. We don't serve frauds like you. The bank manager, Jennifer shouted aggressively at the black woman in her office. The black woman Gabriella remained calm and unreluctant to leave, but the sudden violent movement caught Gabriella off guard. Despite her composed exterior, she hadn't expected to be physically assaulted in a bank, a public institution, in broad daylight. The force of their grip caused her to lose hold of her phone, which clattered to the floor and skidded beneath Jennifer's desk, effectively eliminating her ability to document what was happening. Soon, sharp steel scissors sliced through her meticulously crafted braids, each strand fallen to the cold marble floor of a prestigious bank. The sound of a professional woman's muffled sobs as she's restrained by men twice her size, all while customers and employees watch in stunned silence. She had come to request for normal banking services, but instead her dignity was taking away from her grind. But what these bank employees didn't know was who they were really humiliating that day and how much power she had when the woman they thought was a powerless black woman on braids finally revealed who she really was. Before we go deeper into this shocking story, hit that subscribe button now. And if you stand against discrimination, type it in the comments and tell us what country you're watching from. Gabriella Washington wasn't just any customer walking into Premier Financial that fateful morning. The day had started like any other for Gabriella. She carefully styled her natural hair, a crown of beautifully crafted box braids that had taken 8 hours to complete the previous weekend. Before we continue, I want to ask you, what would you have done if you witnessed what happened to Gabriella that day? Would you have spoken up or remained silent like the other customers? The bystander effect is powerful, but so is the voice of just one person willing to stand against injustice. Gabriella Washington. At 38 years old, she embodied excellence in everything she did. Growing up in a working-class neighborhood in Detroit, Gabriella learned early that she would need to work twice as hard to get half as far. By her mid-30s, Gabriella had become a sought-after executive in the financial world. Her name appeared regularly in Fortune and Forbes, celebrating her innovative approaches to ethical investing. When Premier Financial Bank's board began searching for fresh leadership to modernize their institution, Gabriella's name topped their list. After months of negotiations, Gabriella agreed to join Premier Financial's board with the understanding that she would soon transition into the CEO position. The current board members were impressed by her vision for community-focused banking that remained highly profitable. What the board didn't know was Gabriella's personal commitment to transparency and authenticity in leadership. 2 weeks before her official announcement as incoming CEO, Gabriella made an unusual decision. Rather than relying solely on reports and statistics, she would visit several premier financial branches incognito to experience their service as an ordinary customer would. "You can't fix what you don't understand," she told her assistant. "And you can't understand what you haven't experienced." This wasn't a publicity stunt. No cameras would follow her. No press release would announce her findings. This was Gabriella's personal methodology to witness the truth before attempting to reshape it. She had used this approach throughout her career, learning more from these unannounced visits than from months of formal meetings. Gabriella selected 5 branches to visit, including the Westfield location. The Westfield branch of Premier Financial sat in the heart of an affluent suburb, its imposing limestone facade projecting stability and tradition. For 15 years, branch manager Jennifer Pierce had run this location with what the regional director called impressive efficiency. What they didn't see was that Jennifer had created a culture where certain customers received royal treatment while others were subtly discouraged from banking there. Jennifer Pierce, with her perfectly highlighted blonde hair and country club connections, had transformed a public financial institution into her personal thief where she alone determined who was worthy of the bank's services. As a black woman, Gabriella's hair journey had been deeply personal and political. Throughout college and the early years of her career, she had chemically straightened her natural curls, spending thousands of dollars and countless hours maintaining a look that corporate America deemed professional. The burns on her scalp, the damaged edges, the constant maintenance, all were considered necessary sacrifices for success in the financial world. But 3 years ago, after reaching a position of influence, Gabriella made a decision. She would no longer compromise her identity for corporate acceptance. She let her relaxer grow out and began wearing her hair in its natural state. The transition wasn't easy. She noticed the subtle changes in how colleagues addressed her, the microaggressions that suggested her new appearance was somehow less professional. But Gabriella stood firm in her decision. That morning, she selected a conservative charcoal gray pantsuit and minimal jewelry, an outfit that would make her look like any other business professional seeking banking services. No designer labels, no status watches, nothing that would signal her true position in the financial world. Looking in the mirror one final time, Gabriella reminded herself of her purpose. This was about ensuring that Premier Financial Bank truly served all communities equally under her leadership. Time to see what's really happening when no one thinks the boss is watching, she said to her reflection. What Gabriella couldn't know was that her decision to enter the Westfield branch as an ordinary customer would set in motion events that would forever change not just Premier Financial, but her own life as well. As Gabriella Washington pulled into the parking lot of Premier Financial's Westfield branch, she checked her reflection one last time in the rearview mirror, adjusting her conservative charcoal gray pantsuit. No designer labels, no expensive accessories, nothing that would betray her true position in the financial world. Today, she was simply a professional woman seeking banking services. Her box braids were neatly styled, framing her face with dignified elegance. With quiet confidence, Gabriella stepped out of her modest rental car and approached the entrance. She carried a simple leather portfolio containing fictitious business plans. She had prepared documents for a community development project she would pretend to seek funding for. It was a test she had designed specifically to assess how the bank treated entrepreneurs from diverse backgrounds. The interior was impeccable. Leather seating areas, mahogany desks, digital displays showcasing the bank's investment services. Everything conveyed prosperity and exclusivity. 3 teller windows were open, each with short lines of customers. To the right, a reception desk controlled access to the offices where more substantial banking matters were handled. Gabriella approached the reception desk with measured steps, maintaining the perfect balance of confidence and approachability. The receptionist, a young white woman with straight blonde hair pulled into a tight ponytail, glanced up briefly before returning to her computer screen without acknowledgement. Gabriella stood patiently, portfolio clutched professionally at her side. 1 minute passed, then 2. The receptionist continued typing, periodically answering phone calls, but never once looking up again at Gabriella. The doors behind Gabriella opened, and an older white couple entered. The receptionist immediately brightened, her fingers pausing on the keyboard as she called out, "Good morning, Mr. and Mrs. Davidson. How was your trip to the Bahamas?" The couple approached the desk, standing directly beside Gabriella as if she were invisible. For 10 full minutes, the receptionist chatted with the Davidsons about their vacation, their grandchildren, and their upcoming anniversary celebration. Not once did she acknowledge Gabriella's presence or indicate that she should wait her turn. When the Davidsons finally moved on, directed toward an office with a personal escort, Gabriella still stood waiting. The doors opened again. A middle-aged white man in a golf shirt entered. Again, the receptionist immediately looked up with a practiced smile. "Good morning, sir. How can I help you today?" The man explained he needed to discuss investment options. Without hesitation, without even the pretense of checking an appointment book, the receptionist picked up the phone and announced to someone that an investment client needed assistance. Within moments, another staff member appeared to escort him to an advisor. Still, Gabriella waited. 27 minutes had now passed since she first approached the desk. She had been bypassed by 5 separate customers, all white, all immediately acknowledged and assisted. Finally, after helping a 6th customer who had arrived after Gabriella, the receptionist looked up with a tight, impatient expression. "Is there something you need?" she asked, her tone suggesting Gabriella was somehow inconveniencing her by standing there. With professionalism, Gabriella responded, "Good morning. I'd like to speak with someone about business banking services, please." The receptionist's eyes traveled slowly from Gabriella's face to her hair, then down to her modest handbag, and finally to her shoes. Making a visible assessment, her expression shifted from impatience to something more dismissive. "Are you sure you're in the right place?" she asked, enunciating each word with exaggerated clarity. "We're a full-service financial institution for established businesses and high-net-worth individuals. The check-cashing store down on Maple Street might be more your speed." The implication was unmistakable, the prejudice barely concealed behind a thin veneer of professional language. Gabriella had heard variations of this statement countless times throughout her career. The assumption that a black woman couldn't possibly have legitimate business at a prestigious financial institution. What the receptionist couldn't know was that the woman she was dismissing controlled investment portfolios worth more than this entire branch's annual revenue, that the woman she was suggesting should seek services elsewhere would soon be signing her paychecks. Gabriella maintained her composure, neither raising her voice nor showing the frustration that would have been entirely justified. Instead, she placed her business card on the counter, not her real card identifying her as a board member, but one she had created for this exercise, identifying her as the CEO of a modest consulting firm. "I'd like to discuss a business loan for a community development project," she said evenly. "I have projections, business plans, and references. I'd prefer to speak with the branch manager directly." The receptionist picked up the card with visible reluctance, as if touching something distasteful. She glanced at it briefly before setting it aside. "Miss Washington," she said, the forced politeness barely masking her condescension. "Miss Pierce is very busy with important clients today. If you insist on seeing her, you'll need to wait. I can't promise she'll have time for you." "I'm happy to wait," Gabriella replied. With visible annoyance, the receptionist pointed toward a seating area across the lobby. "You can wait over there. I'll let Miss Pierce know you're here when she's available." Gabriella nodded politely and made her way to the indicated area, a small collection of chairs separated from the main lobby. It was clearly the least desirable waiting section, tucked away from the contemporary art and digital displays, almost hidden behind a large potted plant, a subtle way of keeping certain customers out of the main sightline. Gabriella opened her portfolio and pretended to review her documents, while actually observing the dynamics of the branch. Within moments, she noticed the shift in atmosphere her presence created. An older white woman seated nearby gathered her purse and moved to a different section, casting a suspicious glance in Gabriella's direction. Two other customers whispered to each other, their eyes darting toward her braided hair. "So unprofessional," one murmured to her companion. "I don't understand why they can't just wear normal hair to a business setting." "It's so intimidating," her friend agreed. "Makes me uncomfortable just looking at it." Gabriella had heard these comments countless times. The policing of black women's hair was so commonplace that she had developed an emotional callous against such remarks. Still, each instance reinforced why her mission today, and her larger mission as the incoming CEO, was so necessary. Financial institutions weren't just managing money. They were either reinforcing or dismantling barriers to economic equality. 25 minutes. Gabriella sat in that waiting area, watching customer after customer arrive, receive immediate service, and depart. She observed the branch's operations, noting every efficiency and deficiency, every instance of preferential treatment, every subtle signal of who was valued and who was merely tolerated. After 47 minutes of waiting, nearly triple the time any white customer had waited that morning, Gabriella finally saw movement. The receptionist picked up the phone, spoke briefly, then approached the waiting area with visible reluctance. "Miss Pierce will see you now," she said, her tone suggesting this was an extraordinary accommodation rather than a basic service. "Follow me." As Gabriella gathered her portfolio and rose, she noticed several customers watching the interaction with curiosity. Their expressions suggested surprise that someone who looked like her had secured a meeting with the branch manager. These silent judgments were familiar terrain for Gabriella. The constant questioning of her legitimacy in professional spaces had been the background radiation of her entire career. The receptionist led her down a hallway lined with framed photographs of Premier Financial's historic buildings and past presidents, a visual history displaying mostly exclusively white men in positions of power. They arrived at a corner office with a nameplate reading Jennifer Pierce, branch manager, in elegant gold lettering. The door was open, revealing a spacious office with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking a manicured garden. Jennifer Pierce sat behind an imposing mahogany desk, reviewing documents with theatrical focus. She was a woman in her mid-40s, with expertly highlighted blonde hair styled in a sleek bob, wearing a cream-colored designer suit that conveyed both authority and privilege. When the receptionist announced Gabriella's presence, Jennifer looked up with a momentary expression of unfiltered distaste. A grimace quickly rearranged into a tight professional smile that never reached her eyes. "Miss Washington is here about a business loan," the receptionist said, her tone subtly communicating that this was, in her assessment, a waste of the manager's valuable time. Jennifer nodded curtly. "Thank you, Amber." The receptionist departed, closing the door behind her. Gabriella stood just inside the entrance, portfolio in hand, waiting for the customary invitation to sit. "It never came. How can I help you?" Jennifer asked, remaining seated while pointedly leaving Gabriella standing, a power dynamic as old as time. In banking offices across America, potential clients were typically invited to sit, offered water or coffee, treated with the basic courtesies that signaled respect. Not today. Not for Gabriella. Good morning, Miss Pierce. Gabriella began with the warm professionalism that had become her signature. I'm interested in discussing business banking services, specifically financing options for a community development project I'm launching. Jennifer leaned back in her leather chair, her eyes performing the same slow, evaluative scan that the receptionist had executed earlier. A visual assessment meant to communicate that Gabriella was being measured and implicitly found wanting. I see, Jennifer responded, her words stretched and enunciated with exaggerated clarity, as if speaking to someone who might struggle with basic English. And do you understand how business banking works, Miss Washington? Yes, I'm familiar with banking procedures, Gabriella replied evenly, choosing not to mention her extensive qualifications. That would come later. Today was about experiencing the bank's true culture when they didn't know who she was. Well, our business services are typically designed for established enterprises with significant collateral and proven revenue streams, Jennifer continued slowly. Given your urban background, you might find our requirements challenging to meet. There it was, the coded language that served as a thin veil for racial assumptions. Jennifer had no information about Gabriella's background. The phrase urban background was purely an assumption based on her appearance. Gabriella remained professionally composed. I've prepared a comprehensive business plan with 5-year projections, market analysis, and detailed collateral information. I'd be happy to walk you through it. She opened her portfolio and removed the meticulously prepared documents. As she stepped forward to place them on Jennifer's desk, the branch manager made a show of leaning sideways, dramatically trying to see past Gabriella's braided hair as if it were obstructing her vision. I'm sorry, Jennifer said with a theatrical sigh. But would you mind standing a bit to the side? Your hair is blocking my view of my computer screen. The comment was absurd. Gabriella's braids were neatly styled and no more voluminous than any other professional hairstyle. They weren't in any way blocking Jennifer's line of sight. The remark was purely meant to call negative attention to her hair, to mark it as problematic in a professional setting. Actually, Jennifer continued before Gabriella could respond, we've had several customers mention that they find your hairstyle rather intimidating. We try to maintain a certain professional atmosphere at Premier Financial. Perhaps you might consider a more conventional style for future business meetings. Each word landed like a calculated insult designed to remind Gabriella that she was being judged by standards created specifically to exclude people who looked like her. My hairstyle is professional and well-maintained, Gabriella responded calmly. I'd prefer to focus on the business proposal I've prepared. She proceeded to outline the community development project detailed in her documents, a small business incubator designed to support minority entrepreneurs in underserved neighborhoods. As Gabriella explained the social impact potential alongside the solid return on investment projections, Jennifer's expression shifted from dismissive to openly amused. When Gabriella finished her presentation, the branch manager actually laughed. Let me get this straight, Jennifer said, making no effort to hide her condescension. You want Premier Financial to invest in businesses in what did you call them? Underserved communities? That's a creative euphemism. Miss Washington, are you planning to open a hair salon in the hood? Because that seems more aligned with your expertise than financial services. The comment hung in the air. Blatant, undisguised racism delivered with the confidence of someone who had never faced consequences for such behavior. For a moment, Gabriella considered revealing exactly who she was, imagined the satisfaction of watching Jennifer's smug expression dissolve into horror as she realized she had just insulted her future boss. But Gabriella made a strategic decision. She would not reveal herself yet. She wanted to see exactly how far Jennifer Pierce would go when she believed she was untouchable. What followed was a humiliating spiral. Jennifer questioning Gabriella's identification, calling in security, accusing her of fraud, and finally ordering the guards to restrain her. In front of stunned customers, Jennifer retrieved scissors and cut through Gabriella's carefully styled braids, declaring it necessary so that her ID would match her appearance. Tears streamed down Gabriella's face as she endured this public assault. The emotional violence was immeasurable. But even in that moment, Gabriella discreetly pressed an emergency sequence on her, smartwatch and transmitting her location and access to the bank's security camera system, directly to Premier Financial's board members. When Jennifer had cut enough of Gabriella's hair to satisfy her cruelty, leaving her with uneven patches and exposed scalp in places, she stepped back with a self-satisfied expression, admiring her handiwork as if she'd completed a difficult task with particular skill. "Now your appearance matches your ID," she announced to the silent lobby. "Escort her out." The guards dragged Gabriella through the lobby past shocked customers who recorded the scene on their phones but did nothing to intervene. At the front entrance, they pushed her roughly outside, causing her to stumble on the steps. One guard threw her portfolio and handbag onto the sidewalk, its contents spilling out beside her. Humiliated but unbroken, Gabriella gathered her things and drove to her hotel. There, for 2 minutes, she allowed herself to break down in private sobs before regaining her composure. Looking at her reflection, her braids unevenly hacked away, she made a decision. She would not hide the evidence of what had been done to her. She would return, visible proof of the discrimination that millions of women endured, but rarely had such undeniable documentation for. Meanwhile, Premier Financial's board members had already received the live security feed Gabriella had transmitted. The chairman, Harold Greenway, watched in horror as one of his most trusted managers assaulted the very woman who was set to become the institution's CEO. Emergency calls were made, lawyers engaged, and within an hour a convoy of executives arrived at the Westfield branch. As Gabriella entered again, flanked by Harold Greenway and other board members, the atmosphere shifted. Jennifer Pierce froze in disbelief as she recognized the woman she had humiliated. The chairman's voice echoed through the bank as he announced, "Attention all Premier Financial customers and employees. The woman assaulted here today is Gabriella Washington, incoming CEO of our company. She was conducting an undercover assessment when she was subjected to discrimination and violence." The lobby fell silent. Digital displays lit up with footage of the entire incident, the receptionist's dismissive behavior, Jennifer's insults, the false accusations, and the cutting of Gabriella's braids. Customers and staff alike were forced to witness the truth. Jennifer tried desperately to justify her actions as protocol, but Gabriella silenced her. "From the moment I entered, I was discriminated against because of my appearance. You violated company policy, federal law, and basic human decency. You authorized an assault rooted in racist stereotypes." The chairman stepped forward. "Jennifer Pierce, your employment with Premier Financial is terminated effective immediately, along with the security personnel and receptionist involved." Corporate officers escorted them out as customers and staff watched. Gabriella addressed the room. "This isn't just about one incident. Premier Financial will become an institution where everyone is treated with dignity and respect, not just those who fit certain appearances or backgrounds." Jennifer Pierce was later arrested for assault. Civil rights charges were filed, and Gabriella, scarred but resolute, took her rightful place at the helm of Premier Financial, turning her humiliation into a catalyst for sweeping institutional reform. What had been meant to dehumanize her became the very spark that transformed the future of the bank, ensuring that such discrimination could never take root again.